Hi, this is Keith from IELTS Speaking Success, helping you build your skills and confidence to get a high score in IELTS Speaking. This is great. Today it's the fourth video in our series giving you a framework approach to help you master part 2. So we've looked at the overview, we've done people, places. Today let's do events. So in this video, I'm going to give you some recent questions about events, show you a very simple structure you can use, and then lots of language templates, language phrases and idioms, and then finally finish with a model answer and analyze how I've done it. Okay, so let's kick off with some of the recent questions that I would categorize as events. So for example, describe a happy day you would like to have. What a wonderful question. Describe a colourful event that you enjoyed, right? Describe a time you were with people and you got really, really bored. It happens, right? Unfortunately. Or describe a time when you heard that really annoying woman or man next to you on the bus on their mobile phone. Or describe a time when you were in the restaurant and you were having your soup and you found a fly in the soup, or even worse, a hair in the soup. Ugh, bad service. Or describe a time when you had to wake up early because you had your IELTS test. Oh, right. All sorts of questions, right? Different ideas. I think all of these are really events. So they're things that happened, usually one-off at some point in time. So how can we structure this? Well, of course, you can, if you want, follow the bullet points on the cue card. And they're great, and they will work. I am going to suggest the following. Okay, because you don't have to follow the bullet points, right? Let's be clear. They are a guide. You can, but you don't have to. What you could do is think about events as the setting, the people, and what happened. An event is a point in time, right? So looking at the setting includes where it is, what was the story, why were you there, and what was the backdrop or the background to why this event happened and why you were here. So that kind of setting is really a great place to start. Of course, you want to speak about the people who you were with, whether they were your friends or family or unknown strangers, whoever, you'll be talking about the people. And of course, you want to talk about what happened. So that's easy to remember, right? Setting, people, what happened. Let's break it down and look at the kind of language you may want to use. Okay. So with events, the setting. So you may want to say, well, I was living in London when this event happened, right? Or I was working in New York when this event happened. So very simply setting the setting, giving the setting. I was living, working, or travelling in London at the time. I was travelling on holiday in London at the time. Okay? I was living in London at the time. Notice with this the sentence stress. I was living in London at the time. Living London time. I was living in London at the time, right? Because we stress the big words, the nouns, adjectives, adverbs. I was living in London at the time. All the other words we don't stress. The prepositions, the articles, the determiners, a, and, the, was. In fact, the prepositions get squeezed, like was, the auxiliary was, gets squeezed into was. I was living. And that helps you fall into the next word. I was living. I was living in London at the time. At the time. at the time. I was living in London at the time. So just remember that sentence stress. It really helps give a nice, natural rhythm and pronunciation. You may want to begin saying, I used to live in New Delhi, or I used to live in Beijing. And when I was living there, da, 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 da. Again, the setting. Or I used to live in New Delhi, and I would always, in the morning, I would always go down to the street to buy ba, 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 ba. And one day I met this man on the phone, and so the story develops, but some very simple language to set up the setting. Now, what's interesting with settings, and what I really like about giving the setting, is it can bring in lots of different tenses, past tenses, right? In particular, the past perfect. I had done something before that point in time. So if you imagine here, now, it's 2019, I was living in London between 2016 and 2018. When this event happened in March 2017, but I had moved there in 2015. It's a point before the point in the past. That's why it's the past perfect. It's perfect past. I had moved there. So you can see the different tenses. The event happened in March 2017. Simple past. I was living in London at the time. Past continuous. And I had moved there a few years earlier. Past perfect. Isn't that beautiful? All the different tenses. Now, you don't have to use all of them, but you can see the opportunity to mix up some different tenses, right? Especially the past perfect. When you're talking about the setting, that's why I think the setting is really good to use. Let's move on from the setting to talk about people. So the people you meet or the people you're with in your event, maybe you want to talk about personality. Probably more than appearance, I think, because the event, something happens and the personality is going to have a bigger impact on you, right? So, for example, the person speaking on the phone on the bus with a loud voice, right? They're rude, really? Or maybe they're thick-skinned. So thick-skinned is literally your skin is very thick, so you don't feel things. So you don't feel the emotions of other people. You don't have that empathy. So, you're insensitive. You're not aware of things happening around you. So maybe they're thick-skinned. Practice that. Thick-skinned. Maybe they're just inconsiderate, which means they don't think about other people. Right? And that may be, where you have bad service and the salesperson may be rude, they may be inconsiderate, maybe they're not thinking about you, they're just thinking about their company policy, maybe. The opposite of maybe talkative, for example, is quiet. She was quite quiet. That's nice, right? Notice it's quite quiet. Fairly quiet. The opposite of rude, polite. The opposite of thick-skinned, sensitive. So they're really aware. They say something, you may react in a certain way. So they're very sensitive. And the opposite of inconsiderate, surprise, surprise, considerate or thoughtful. So if you do something kind for somebody, maybe you buy them tickets for a show, then that's a thoughtful thing to do or a considerate thing to do. You'll find out about that in my sample answer coming soon. Finally, describing people, she was witty. So in events you may bump into or come across, meet funny people, humorous people, So witty, funny. She was witty. She was smart, ding, intelligent. Or she was quick on her feet. Quick on her feet. Quick on her feet is able to do things, to think quickly and do things. Okay? He was quick on his feet. Full of beans. Some people have lots of energy, right? Go to a colourful event and the dancers and performers are full of beans. They have all this energy. So there's lots of words for personality, and obviously I can't give you that many in this video, but here are some that might be useful to talk about events, good and bad. So what happened? Well, I'm going to look here particularly at language and grammar again. Okay, so the typical and rather clever grammar you may want to use. So very often when something happens, an event, you say what you were doing when something happened. It's the classic past continuous plus the past simple or simple past. I was eating my soup when I found a hare. I was sitting on the bus when I heard this man. And so on, right? I was doing something when something happened. Now, another really interesting pattern, if you like, the pattern of 3, I call it. And when you do conversation analysis, you'll find this. It's a very natural thing to do, at least in English and maybe other languages. So we often say 3 things at the same time, right? I did A, I did B, and then I did C, right? I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I got ready for school. For school. For work. How old am I? Things like that. I got home, took off my shoes, and sat down and relaxed. Yeah. I got a cup of tea, I sat down, and I started to work. 1, 2, 3. It's really natural. And if you can just practice it, you'll find very naturally it comes up. So the pattern of 3 can make you sound really natural in English. Now, at the end of your talk, in part 2, you may want to express a regret. Oh, I wish, because you regret it, but also because there's some great language and tenses. I wish I had known, so past perfect, and then I wouldn't have gone, conditional perfect. I think this is called the third conditional, right? So I wish I had gone, I wish I had known, and then I wouldn't have gone. I wish I had known the restaurant was so filthy and I wouldn't have gone. I wish I had known the concert was going to be rubbish and I wouldn't have gone. So you can use this. It's really nice tense and, it can impress the examiner. And another, looking back, I wouldn't do that again. So looking back, thinking back, looking back, I wouldn't do that again. So it's a simple conditional. So you can see some really nice language that you can use here to extend your grammatical range. Okay, excellent. Now, I'm going to move on to give you a sample answer. I'm going to try and pull in and use some of these tenses and expressions that we've looked at to answer this question. Describe a colourful event you enjoyed. Colourful event can mean just an interesting event, but I would advise you to talk about an event that's not only interesting, but that has colours. Because part 3 is going to talk about colours and the symbolism of colours. It would be good in part 2 if you mentioned colours as part of the event as well. Okay, so maybe you talk about a wedding, but mention the different colours that you see. Or a concert, talk about the colours and the lights, okay? Even if you went to, I don't know, some parade in the street and the different colours and the flags, mention the colours. Right, so here we are. Let me show you my model answer. Describe a colourful event you enjoyed. Well, a while back, I went to see a show called The Lion King. I was travelling on holiday in London at the time with my family. I had heard about that show, so I decided to get tickets for all of us. My daughter was dead excited about it. She was 7 at the time, so she was really into animals. My wife was pleased as punch because she'd never been to a show in London before. She said I had been very thoughtful and considerate buying us tickets. So we arrived at the theatre, gave in our tickets and sat down. We were struck by the size of it. The hall was huge. The stage was closed by this large red curtain, and the auditorium had these beautiful golden arches right up in the galleries. Our seats were really comfy, with these nice blue covers. After a few minutes, the show started, and it was wonderful. The costumes were striking, full of different colours and textures, and there was an array of lights reflecting the various colours of Africa, right? You really felt like you were there in Africa. So we loved it. And if I had known it was going to be that good, I would have forked out a bit more money to get seats closer to the stage. But it was great. Wow, interesting. The Lion King. Have you seen The Lion King? Go and see it. I really recommend it. So, let's take a moment to look at the language that came out there. So let's have a look at the language. You can see I began with a setting, right? Well, actually, I began with a direct answer. I think it's really important in the first sentence to tell the examiner what you're going to talk about. I went to see a show called The Lion King. Boom, that's the event. Get that out of the way. A while back, I was travelling on holiday in London at the time, right? That setting, what was happening. I had heard about the show, past perfect. So I had heard about it before we went. Great. My daughter was dead excited. Dead excited means very excited. It's colloquial, but it's great for IELTS speaking. Again, notice she was 7 at the time, just a reference to the time. Pleased as punch, really happy, really pleased. Great expression, idiomatic. Again, my wife had never been. I'm really using that past perfect here with the setting. This is all before I tell you about the show. But here I'm talking now about the people, right? My daughter, a little bit, my wife, and me. She said I was thoughtful, and considerate. So, nice vocabulary to describe personality. Then we kick in with what happened. Did you notice the pattern of 3? We arrived at the theatre, gave in our tickets, and sat down. Really nice, yeah? And then we talk about the stage, the colours, red curtain, golden arches. The arches are those like that. The golden arches is actually McDonald's. When you talk about the golden arches, it's McDonald's. But these were actually real golden arches up in the top part of the auditorium of the whole theatre. It's called the galleries. Seats, comfy, blue, great. And now notice I'm using quite simple language, like full of different colours, various colours. It's absolutely fine. You don't need lots of fancy, complicated words all the time. Not at all. It's natural spoken English, the way we speak, full of colours, full of different colours. That's really good. Don't get too obsessed with everything must be idiomatic or fancy. I've actually done quite a lot here. I've used quite a lot of fancy language, but it doesn't have to be that much. Okay, and then I finish with this cheeky little conditional. If I had known, I would have done it. I would have forked out more money. That just came naturally. To fork out money is to pay money. But we fork out the money, pay the money. I would have forked out more to get seats closer to the stage. That's it. That's a look at the grammar, vocabulary, a little bit of pronunciation. This is a way you can look at events. It's all in the practice, right? Practice, practice, practice. And then on the day in your test, you won't be able to think about these templates. So make sure you practice lots. Listen, if you've enjoyed this video and you would like some more of this, I have a complete online course called IELTS Speaking Part 2. It just focuses on Part 2 and it's packed full of videos, analysis, the grammar. It'll teach you fluency. It'll teach you idiomatic expressions and also pronunciation like the sentence stress, but a lot more. To really get your level up to a Band 7. It's brilliant. Follow the link downstairs. No, follow the link below. Go and check it out. If it's right for you, go for it. Great. It's been a pleasure. Look out for the next video, number 5, and we will be talking all about activities. See you there. Bye-bye.